So this is another lecture on why study civics. I talked about that in the introductory video that you watched a few minutes ago. This is a little more specific to civics, and it's going to have a few more things to discuss, and I'll bring forth some examples that I hope can lead to some discussion as we go. So why study civics? Being a participatory member of our society. You could, and many people do, go through their lives in the United States, so as if they're with blinders on, not looking either way, just living their quote best life, and that is fine. It's what unfortunately a large number of our population has done historically and continue to do now, and the the facts for that is if you look at who votes, what percentage of the population votes, what percentage of the population participates in political campaigns or volunteers at soup kitchens and animal shelters and those things. When you begin to really dig deep into the numbers of people who participate in our society, it's a strikingly low number. And as that is the case, it has adverse knock-on effects for the quality of democracy that we live in. Our democracy suffers when fewer and fewer people participate in our constitutional democracy. So here is a quote. This quote is actually, when you look at the civics frameworks, the National C3 civics frameworks, this is what you would see. In a constitutional democracy, productive civic engagement requires knowledge of the history, principles, and foundations of our American democracy, and the ability to participate in civic and democratic processes. People demonstrate civic engagement when they address public problems individually and collaboratively, and when they maintain, strengthen, and improve communities and societies. Thus, civics is in part the study of how people participate in governing society. So I want to take this a little bit at a time here and draw your attention to certain parts of this that are really important. So obviously, we are going to look at the history and principles and foundations of American democracy. Obviously, that is part of this course. However, it cannot be the only part of our course, because for civics to exist, for civics to happen, we also then have to figure out and be given the ability to participate in those processes, in those institutions. We only demonstrate that when we engage in addressing public problems, whether we do that by ourselves, whether we do that collaboratively. And here is another really good point to that, is that some things are good to do individually. Others, it's really good to do collaboratively, and it can be more powerful collaboratively. And we'll talk about how those two exist. Sometimes they exist seamlessly, sometimes they exist in tension. But doing is as much about, civics is as much about doing as it is about learning the thing, memorizing the institution. It's as much about being engaged. And so you see here at the end, people demonstrate civic engagement when they address public problems individually and collaboratively, and when they maintain, strengthen, and improve communities and societies. So the engagement is maybe individual, it may be collaborative, but its purpose is always to push society forward. That is what, when we talk about progressive, we're not talking about an ideology that somebody might have. Progressive, making progress is what I mean when I say it's a very progressive class. It's a class about making progress. And so that's what we're talking about. Civics is the study of how people participate in governing society to move it forward, to progress it forward. And so, as we're talking today about what it means to be in civics and what it means to study civics, this should be at the heart of what we do going forward. So unlike another course, so if you did math, if you were taking Algebra 1 or geometry, you would just kind of learn the rules of the Pythagorean theorem. This is how you do it. This is how you implement it. Learn the rules of the Pythagorean theorem. This is the daily grammar practice in English. This is what a noun, a verb, pronoun. This is the structure of grammar. All of that is valid, and you need to have that information. This course, slightly different. This course is about giving you tools to reshape the society, to take society further, to progress it further. So yeah, we do have some of that stuff like you might have in math and science and English. We're going to have some of that, right? You got to know there are 100 members of the U.S. Senate, right? You got to know there are 435 representatives in the House of Representatives. There are certain things that you got to know, the difference between the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. You got to know the differences between those. But you learn those so that you learn the larger theme, which is the restructuring, reshaping, progressing of society further down the road. So one of the things that we're going to talk about, and I'll put some videos up on this, is our capstone project. And like I said, I will put some videos up on that particular thing later. But studying civics in this class, aside from that project, is really going to be about you and your willingness to dissect and discuss and engage your peers in thoughtful and progressive conversations that progress forward where you stand and where they stand. We want to move forward together. And so studying civics is it's very participatory. You could certainly come in here and you can certainly sit in the back row, or you can certainly be at home playing on your phone right now, and you can get through here and you'll get through the class and nothing bad is going to happen to you, right? You do you. However, if you want to maximize not only your experience in education, but you want to maximize your voice in society, then really getting engaged in this class and being willing to get your hands dirty and willing to really engage in topics thoughtfully, that would have much greater rewards for you and much greater possibilities for you going forward. Again, you want to be a wallflower and hang in the back and just do the bare minimum, that's you. And what that means is that you will be like one of those tens of millions of Americans who just puts those blinders on and walks through life. And as I've said, there are tens of millions of people who do that. That happens, that exists, that's fine. They do it. But the systems, the institutions that are operating will exploit them, will potentially mistreat them, will certainly take advantage of them, and they will be none the worse or no more aware or no more engaged. And that is a pretty telling thing. Often the people who are hurt the most in society are the people who have thrown up their hands to ignore society or have walked away from engagement. And when that happens, it weakens all of us. We need everybody. We need all we, the people, to go forward and really make this a more perfect union. So we need to know that our political, social, cultural institutions are constructed and run by institutions. Institutions are man made and are thus fallible and malleable. Those two words are very important. The institutions we have in this country were made by men, which makes them fallible, which makes them subject to mistakes. They're mistake ridden. We can go into the Constitution, we can pull out dozens of mistakes, starting with the 3/5 compromise. Nobody is 3/5 of a person. That was a big mistake, right? We can all agree in 2020 that nobody is 3/5 of a person. We are all equal people. However, that was a mistake, right? Men who wrote the Constitution were fallible. But the Constitution is also malleable, meaning it can be changed. Clay is malleable. When you get Play-Doh, you get clay. You mold it into something, right? So the questions then become, how do we want to, once these mistakes come to light, how do we change them? How do we mold them? How do we construct them anew? And the people who are engaged in that process are the people who are paying attention. They're the people who are buying into this. They're the people who are listening. They're not the people with the blinders on walking down the street. They're not the ones who are getting to reshape these institutions. So it becomes incumbent upon us, if we really think that there are mistakes in this union, and there are, we need to be a more perfect union. We're not a perfected union. It doesn't say we're already perfect. It says we need to be more perfect. We need to get there. And so that fallibility, as we realize things are wrong with our country, who gets to reshape those things? That is really at the essence of what I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to teach you how to be a person who can reshape those things. Our government is not unique. 200 countries that are democracies around the world. I mean, democracy is prevalent everywhere. But what is unique about our structure is that it really does require informed and committed and engaged citizens. If only 60% of the population vote in a presidential election, or in a non-presidential year, if only 40% of the population vote, then that is large groups of people not participating in our system. That is a large number of people not addressing that malleable reshaping of society that needs to happen. And it lends itself to chaos, and it lends itself to struggle. And so the more people we can get in on this, the better off we'd be. So expectations are simple in this class. I'm just asking you to care. And I'm asking you to care, but not because I want you to make me feel good or makes me a better teacher or any of that nonsense. I want you to care for your own sake. I want you to care because I don't want you to become a pawn that's taken advantage of. I don't really know you at this point, but I'm looking forward to knowing you and seeing you grow and mature over the 4 years that you're here at Central. I care about you. Believe that. Believe that I care. And believe that I care so much that I want to see you not be stepped on by the system. And so it becomes, for me, the simplest of things. When you're here in this room, in this space, whatever space that might be, that you care, that you are taking care to pay attention, to be engaged, to be thoughtful, to take seriously the power and agency that you have in this society to shape and reshape our communities. There's a quote here that I have posted um, that I really like, that I think is a great quote for the class. We are not to simply bandage the wounds of the victims beneath the wheels of injustice. We are to drive a spoke in the wheel itself. And it was said by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who fought against the Nazis in World War II and was killed by the Nazis after being imprisoned for about a year by them for treason. But he said this, and it's great to just think about that. This is what this class is. This class is trying to help you learn how to give power to your voice so that you can drive a spoke in those wheels of injustice, those fallible things that are wrong, those things that we know are wrong. You know they're wrong. You know that shouldn't be. But how do we talk about those things? How do we get to a point where your voice can rage against that and in so doing reform it into something better? Um, it's it's this voice from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, this statement. It's a call to us, for us, to hold our institutions accountable. And so how we do that is really important. And I'm gonna kind of end the lecture there and throw this question up into a chat room for you all to chat on this. How besides voting, what would be ways you'd like to see institutions held accountable? And institutions can be public education, they can be uh, elected officials, they could be healthcare systems, any sort of institution that you can think of. Just think of an institution, anything, social institution, governing institution, political institution. How do we hold those accountable? And I'll put this question up there, and in the folder, in the page, I'll put some examples of institutions too that help get the ball rolling. But just I want you guys as a class to discuss how can we be that spoke in the wheel. So have a good day and peace.